for the co-development phase.
Okay, so once that's finished, you then have to seek the funding for the much larger funding that's going to be needed for the development execution. Okay, so is the Canadian Environmental Impact Agency already involved? Are they already doing the assessment? Or?
Heavily involved. We have begun the impact assessment process. We've started doing field studies over the last few years, and we have a comprehensive field study program being planned in 2026, 2027, 2028.
Okay, excellent. And my understanding would be you'd continue to run the existing trains until the project is complete, and then you would have an integrated network. You would have high-speed rail would be the only rail within that corridor, right?
Are you referring to the VIA corridor on the north shore of Lake Ontario?
Well, just there's going to be 7 stations, if I understand it correctly, yes, in the high frequency rail proposal, correct?
Correct.
So you've still got local via service to communities that will be that won't be part of this. Like, for example, Peterborough, I think is one example that we provide service to that won't be on the network.
No, Peterborough has a high-speed train station.
But some of the other smaller communities won't. So
correct,
you would continue to have local via rail service.
Via rail will continue to operate, and we've divided our project into different segments. Once a segment is complete, it will go into operation. We won't wait for the entire 1,000-kilometer corridor before we start service.
Okay, so would you, like, I'm just trying to imagine, sorry, pardon my question, like, we would have just high frequency rail, for example, to Montreal. We would no longer have or would you have a local
service? The via rail service will still continue as what it looks like in 10, 15 years. We don't know, but it provides incredibly important service to a lot of communities along the lake.
Okay, yeah, just trying to imagine. Okay, so it would still, but you would do your best to integrate the two networks and use obviously the existing real estate space assets sort of thing. Okay, and when I mentioned, my particular community that has that large swath of federal land, I imagine you're looking when you're developing the corridor and the alignment as well, you're probably looking at development opportunities and how communities are served. How are you working with other federal government partners, for example, when, interest in terms of building this transportation network, but also the housing that goes with it? Like, how is that being integrated together?
So another fantastic question. We are working very closely with the NCC as well as Housing Infrastructure and Communities Canada around the housing component. Transit-oriented development or transit-oriented communities are a critically important concept here in Ontario. And we see the project as an enabler for housing. So we have to work really closely with HICC, and obviously the NCC plays an important role in the Ottawa region as well. But we're very closely connected.
Okay, thanks very much. And if this does implicate my community, as I suspect it might, I'd be interested in having further discussions. Thank you.
And Councillor, I'm happy to extend an invitation to yourself to do a briefing and to all councillors that are interested. We want to be here often. We want to make sure that you're very well informed.
Great, thank you for that. And forgive me, Councillor George, if it's okay, Councillor Devine, committee member. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor DesRoches. I am so sorry I came in 7 minutes late for your meeting, a meeting I was very, very much looking forward to and very, very excited by. It's not often that we get to hear presentations that encourage us all to dream, really, and not think big, but think huge. And I can only speak on behalf of myself and my team, but we talk about the transformative effects of rail and the broader integration of rail into all facets of society, all users, whether high-speed users between Quebec City and Toronto, or just greater integration of rail for just regular commuters here. I'm going to please take you up on your offer to meet separately with individual councillors, if only to hear more about your ideas and to share, a humble councillor's ideas as well. I've been having many conversations with our very passionate transportation planning staff about rail integration in Ottawa. I'm very pleased to hear from you that Alto is more than willing to work very, very closely with municipalities to look at how we can do that integration of existing rail systems and existing rail infrastructure, where we're not just only serving the needs of high-speed commuters, but working in tandem with the needs of daily commuters just going from point A to point B in a city. So I'm going to try to come over and grab your cards and not hug you at the same time. And I would love to have a meeting at some point.
A hug is welcome, Councillor.
It'll happen. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
For free hugs. All right. Councillor DeRoche.
Thank you, Chair. Would you entertain questions to staff, Mr. Chairman, or is it just exclusively with the delegation?
Absolutely.
Okay, I wonder if I could ask Ms. Chi. I understand that I'm pretty sure that years ago we had acquired some corridors, former rail corridors. Some of them are being used as multi-use pathways, as Councillor Kitts indicated, which I think makes that a real challenge. Can you just confirm whether we, as a city, are owners of any former rail corridors?
Yes, Chair, thank you for that, Councillor. We do own several corridors that have been abandoned when they come up for sale. The city has a policy to acquire them, so we do acquire them for transportation uses, and we have been using them in the interim for recreation. So there's some facilities along there. Parts of the Trans-Canada Trail is one of the corridor that we have. We acquired a section of the Beachburg just a few years ago. The Prescott Trail. Okay. Sorry, for details, Jennifer can provide you.
The answer is yes. Oh,
Specifically.
okay. Okay, thank you for that answer. And I'll just speak to the DUDAS motion if we're talking, I respect the spirit behind it. I feel like Sam and Cowell here today. I think it's an interesting project. We've got a lot of priorities in our own city that we've been championing and we want to see progress on, in particular rail to Canada and Barrhaven. I think it's early to give a ringing endorsement to this project. I think that's the role of the MPs. If they believe this is important to Ottawa, they need to get behind it. And I really appreciate the commitment to be present as this goes forward. I think it looks good on paper, and that's what concerns me is once we get into the detail, there's going to be potentially some challenges that we need to work through. The interprovincial bridges, for example, look good on paper until we start to get into how we're going to plan those. So I respect the intent of the motion, but I'll dissent on it when it comes forward, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly noted that there's a lot more devil in the detail. And if you're dealing with the NCC, good luck to you. That being said, certainly we'll make sure that your dissent is noted. Councillor Skalski.
Hi, yeah, I just had a question. You mentioned that you're looking at rail, like the existing corridors, but is it exclusive to existing corridors, or is the potential for expropriation of lands and actually identifying private properties as well?
So we are looking for a dedicated corridor which will require land. So there will be a requirement for acquisition. What that looks like in scope, we don't know yet. But what we do know is as we're developing our assessment of the best possible route, one of the criteria that we're looking at is to minimize impact on property owners, farmers, communities as much as we can to ensure as minimal disruption as possible. Daphne, do you want to add?
Well, best practices are to look at minimize the impact existing corridor. You mentioned, where we can go that would have the least impact on the community, the environment, and as well as Indigenous reconciliation, things like energy corridors, highways. So we'll be finding the best possible route at the lowest possible impact. Granted the fact that there will be gaps in the route that we'll have to engage with and find a solution.
And just to quickly add, the corridor, as we will all know, is it needs to be as straight as possible. Turning radius required for high-speed rail is around 7 kilometers. So we want to minimize impact, but we also have to be cognizant, like to generate speeds, it needs to be straight.
Just in terms of timing, so you mentioned that there'd be public consultation in January. Do you think that sort of the earliest introduction to the community about the project? Or do you think at that time you'll actually be able to outline some potential corridors and have residents have an awareness of whether they're implicated?
So the engagement period that we're looking to do from January through March is what I call 80% information, 20% consultation. And I say that because we're trying to both inform everyone on what high-speed rail is, what the benefits are, what the challenges are. With high speed, you can't have level crossings, for example. So that means grade separations, as the councillor mentioned. It also means fencing in some respects because you can't allow people to cross a corridor with a train going 315 kilometers an hour. So the information is going to be really important in introducing the project. Where the consultation component period will be around those wide corridors I mentioned earlier to get community input on what we should be aware of as we're trying to narrow down what we hope will be a preferred alignment.
Okay, so did I hear the wide corridors would be something that's discussed around that January to March period?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Just maybe to mention that we've already done a pre-work of removing the highly sensitive environmental areas, so that first version of the corridor has done a pre-triage work, and then we'll be engaging with, what are the priorities.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Oh, Councillor Carr?
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to follow up on that point. So you mentioned that the Canadian Environmental Impact Assessment is already doing the assessment. So wouldn't they, so they do have a preliminary corridor route?
We have to provide them with a study area corridor later in 2026. And the consultation period will help us to determine what is submitted.
Okay, thanks. And can you just confirm, so the 7-kilometer turning radius means that you need 7 kilometers wide? Can you just explain that a little bit?
Just technically, we're engaging with the Environmental Impact Agency, but we haven't deposited our project description. So we're still working again with, using the field studies, the engagement we're doing to come up with the right project description that's going to have a narrowed corridor after this engagement period. So our intention is to provide the impact agency with the, narrowest possible corridor. So we haven't started that part with the agency yet. Okay, and can you just explain the 7-kilometer turning radius piece?
Yeah, I think, oh, go ahead.
So as a technical requirement for high-speed rail, the train can't turn on a dime, if you will. So that means that we can't have sharp turns. So we'll need to have very wide or that's the high radius curve so that the train can operate at the high speed. So that's why we're saying so we have to find the straightest possible pathway.
Got it, thanks. And high frequency rail in some other countries is located outside, the stations are located outside of the urban center. Are we looking at that here?
Ideally, we want to have stations where there are people, and whether it's Ottawa, Montreal, Toronto, it's really important. Peterborough, Trois-Rivières would require new stations, right? Because they don't have existing stations in their area.
Okay, so existing stations is what I was looking for. Thank you.
Great. So no Herdman curves on this project.
I think that's right.
Yeah, so on that, as we get down to the wrap up, and I see Councillor Drost is back on the board, because I think we're getting really in the weeds and something that I asked to be brought here as discussion. Councillor Drost
Brought a lot of interest.
Simon Cowell.
A lot of interest.
He hates high speed. Continue.
Last question, Chair, I promise. I'm not known for this. Are you contemplating P3 partnerships going forward as part of the execution of this?
That is what we're already using with the consortium.
Okay.
It's alliance model isn't the appropriate term, but it's a joint model of governance with the consortium, from the design, delivery, operations, maintenance of the project.
Okay, thank you. That's all. Thank you for the answers.
That's a terrific question. And thank you, because I've known a little bit about this. There was a lot of confusion, and you can see here today, a lot of people thought, oh, it's going to be the slow train to nowhere. And clearly, this is a very ambitious project by the federal government. Again, as a national building project in a time of economic crisis, we have an opportunity here. And it won't, my understanding in speaking with ministers, this is not to take away from municipal initiatives from the FCM perspective. This is a completely separate bucket that looks at this as a national priority. Would that be a correct assumption that I have been part of these discussions? That would be
Absolutely
the
correct assumption, a national priority.
Wonderful. So on that, again, any time that I can get onto a train versus sitting at the airport, having to go through a strip search, having to pop my ears and then land back down is a good day. It also creates competition because I don't think flights are that cheap anymore. And we've seen the importance of that. So again, very early days, I want to thank you for coming out and speaking to this. It's education. It will continue. And so we have the motion of Councillor Dudas. I've noted the dissension from Councillor DeRoche. On the rest of Laura's motion, is that item carried? Noting the DeRoche dissent. And then on the actual report, is that report received? Thank you very much for coming out today, folks.
Thank you so much.
So at this point, again, we have two delegations. Unless people had the burning need, you've probably seen the Saint Laurent presentation. I think we've held these folks here long enough. The delegations, my understanding is you want to reverse the order of speaking, I believe. So Richard, if you wanted to come forward to the microphone, if you haven't been here before, there's a microphone up here and our clerk's office and assistants will help you out there right now.
Okay, you just turned it on.
Good morning, all the members of council.
Hi, Richard. How are you doing today? Thank you for coming out. I believe James is with you and your lovely wife, Louise, is here as well today.
Yeah.
So you have 5 minutes if you haven't been
I
here
have.
before, and the floor is yours.
5 minutes right now. Okay. I attended about 2 months ago an open house, and I had a lot of concerns because I have 2 properties along the corridor, and it's going to greatly affect my my properties, and I have to talk to you about this. And there's so many things that I have to talk about. I can't remember them all to speak to you, so I wrote it all down. And my good friend James DeBroy here, he will read what I wrote, and so that everything that I have in my mind is.
And we've shared that on our drive as well with all our committee members that you've provided that, and it's been shared as well. So James, thank you for coming out.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and greetings, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. I'm here with helping, as Richard just said, a longtime friend and his wife, Louise, dealing with an issue that is affecting their properties. As a personal comment, I think the committee just heard a very uplifting, positive story about how things will improve Ottawa and businesses in Ottawa. However, it was pointed out that occasionally when you get down a little into the weeds, you see there's some things that are not all that favorable towards the people and businesses. I think that'll be the case here today, except it's not positive for businesses in Ottawa to start with in this particular case. So let me read, if you don't mind, or highlight. We have copies of what Richard has prepared for delivery here this morning. He's the owner of Renault Limited, which is a business that's been in existence in Ottawa somewhere in the order of 70 years. So it's not just a passing operation, a longstanding company. It owns 2 properties on Saint Laurent Boulevard. The first one's located at 865 Saint Laurent Boulevard, essentially at the intersection of MacArthur Road. The immediate neighbor to the north is the Coconut Lagoon, and the owner of that is here today to represent that situation. And to the south is a building belonging to the Indigenous Peoples of Canada, and beyond that, there's commercial establishments such as Heinz, Hyundai, Surgeon Motors, Speedy Muffler, and the like. The second property, owned by Renault Limited, is at the corner of Silville Road and Saint Laurent Boulevard. It is directly across from the shopping center, Saint Laurent Shopping Center, and it's right at the corner of Silville and Saint Laurent. And both these are going to be adversely affected significantly by this plan. So let me start with 865, which is the one that's at the corner of MacArthur. It was purposely designed and built as a 6-bay automotive service garage. It has been providing local area automotive repair service for the past 49 years, half a century. A depiction of the proposed plan will a depiction of the proposed plan shows that it's going to eliminate several of the parking spots, thus leaving the business a 6-bay automotive garage with 3 parking spaces. Adequate parking is critical to the continued viability of this business. Keeping in mind this establishment that caters to automotives, the elimination of 6 of the existing 9 parking spaces and the access to the facility will greatly diminish the property, the capacity of the business and the value of the property. The major issue with the plan is the installation of a bus shelter directly abutting the facility's showroom public area. That facility has near floor-to-ceiling windows, and given that the bus shelter is going to be within inches of the building itself, of the showroom, it's not even going to be possible to wash the windows of the showroom. There won't be any space between the bus shelter and the showroom. It won't even be possible to weed in between the two. We note that as it is now, there's an existing bus shelter about 92 meters north of the property from the corner of the facility. And that existing bus shelter is in front of a public school, Rideau High School. We don't know at this point whether or not that existing bus shelter and bus stop is going to continue to be in the corridor plan.
James, just so you're aware, I usually run a tight ship here, but in this case here, I'm going to extend with the permission of committee over the 5 minutes for additional few minutes, if that's okay, because I want you to move on to the secondary property.
Okay.
They seem to be, and then after we're complete with your delegation, I made note of questions because I think there's a difference in this, and I'm going to ask staff to explain the north section versus the south section, plus all the timelines as well. But we do have a copy of this as well. So if you could please proceed to the next property, just to ensure we get some detail and context around that.
Okay. Can I make just a final comment about this property? It's almost at the intersection of MacArthur Road. So you're jamming up that intersection under the proposed plan. So the second property is, as I said, is at the corner of Silver and Center on Boulevard. In 1980, there was a strip of land expropriated from this property as well. The purpose of the expropriation was to add a lane to Saint Laurent so that a turn could be made off Saint Laurent onto Serval. So this property has already been struck with a expropriation. And now the plan is proposing to take a further 12.7 feet of property. The property is pie-shaped. If you take a strip off this property, it's going to adversely affect the operation, which is a Petro-Canada self-service gas station. It's going to adversely affect significantly value of the property. It could very well be, and I'm ad-libbing now, I'm going from memory here because I know our time is short. It could very well be that Petro-Canada won't renew, and we will not find anybody else to renew as a gas bar under those circumstances if you take this property. At the moment, there are 3 parking spots. The plan is going to reduce one of those parking spots, the size of one of those parking spots. That's a dedicated handicap parking spot.
James, if it's okay, unfortunately, the time is concluded, and I got to be fair because I do this, whether you're speaking for or against. But that being said, I've noted some questions. I don't see questions from members of committee. After we finish with the second delegation, we know you quite well, sir. We will definitely, I'm sure, have questions to staff, especially around the timing about this entire project and the communications with yourself, Richard, about your 2 properties, as well as the next delegation as well. So thank you for coming out today.
Thank you.
I leave you a copy of my transcript.
Absolutely. We've actually circulated it. We have a drive here. So everything that's been submitted to our committee coordinator.
You said you received it?
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah. I had
And we
sent
have a
it
copy
last night, and I wasn't sure if it was going to make it in this morning.
Yep. The committee
Okay.
coordinator is
That's
beside
fantastic.
me and has confirmed that as well.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For all your
Looking forward to
attention. Yes, thank
consideration.
you.
Hi, Joe. How are you doing? You're no stranger to this place. You have great food, by the way. Am I allowed to say that? Am I bonusing by saying that? Coconut Lagoon has the best food. Oh my God. Look at getting in trouble. No, terrific food. I am known for getting in trouble. You have 5 minutes. The floor is yours.
I don't need 5 minutes, but I just thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. This is first time I'm doing this, but I wanted to echo what Richard said about 856. My building is 853, and literally it's only 5 feet away from his building, my building. And you know, I'm there for 21 years. And during COVID, I had a very bad fire, and I reinvested a lot of money, hoping to make that Saint Laurent much better. And I built a patio. And right now in the plan, the patio supposed to eliminate the patio and put it on the side, which is north side. I have few concerns because once you take out the patio, the face of my building is gone, and we made it such a way that it looks nice from the front. So if taking out the patio, and after the COVID, it's really important that patios people really enjoy, and we wanted to make it lively, the Saint Laurent Boulevard. That's why we invested a lot of money into that, and people loving it. And having a bus shelter next door, maybe 5 feet away from my building, when there is another bus stop, which is in front of Rideau High School, which has more accessible, people can move around, which is really good. All my staff uses, some of my guests uses that bus stop. I think city should reconsider and put that bus stop there, and try to eliminate less problems for our buildings, which is existing and doing a business and things like that for the past more like 50. My building is there for 100 years, but it's still doing good business there. So I wanted to raise that concern. And I echo with Richard. It's nice to develop the Saint Laurent, but considering what is there, and demolition is easy, but building up is very hard. People, it's put a lot of effort and things like that. So that's pretty much I have.
Thank you, Joe. And just real quick, before I go to questions to staff, and I think that's where we're going to go. You've been working with staff on the timelines. This isn't imminent. This is like a very future planning exercise. Have they made sure you're aware of that?
Yes, I know that, but
Okay.
beginning stage, if I raise our concerns, it can
Absolutely.
be noted going further down and, getting into the things. So that's why I raised the concern with the people. They said it will be 5 years, 7 years, but still, yeah.
I think it's going to be longer than that, and I'll be grilling staff on that for certain.
But that is what
But that being said, I want to be sitting on your patio one day when I'm not a politician and still
You can-
enjoying it. So thank
you
you
can
for
always
that,
go.
and I'll certainly ask staff those questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks
Okay.
for coming out today.
Thank you.
Yes, I will. There's a point where I won't be a politician. This will happen. Really, not a chance, right? So on that, thank you for our delegations today. At this point, maybe I'll get staff to comment because this also triggered me as well. It's great to have these wonderful concepts about the future, but it really gets people very concerned immediately. What committee members need to know, because I'm pretty eminent, I know this file pretty closely. Councillor King and I share many parts of it. We also look at in the south end, it actually does extend into parts very close to Councillor Carr's as well. There's two segments essentially, and maybe I'll get Jennifer and the gang to explain the south side versus the north side, what funding, if any, is there, which there's none, we have no money, and go into detail about what the timelines would be on something like this. And why this is important. I think that is critical.
So thank you, Chair, for the question. So the project actually divided the corridor into 5 segments, but for the purposes of this discussion, there's really the section that's north of Saint Laurent Eau train station and south of Saint Laurent Eau train station. And the reason for that distinction is because in the 2025 Transportation Master Plan, the segment south of the Saint Laurent Eau train station is identified in the city's priority transit network, which means that we anticipate implementation by 2046. The section north is identified for isolated transit priority improvements, but there is no funding identified for implementation. It's certainly a much longer initiative. So the expectation is that the southern section would be part of the city's application to the Canada Public Transit Fund, but implementation of that southern section is, of course, dependent on that funding, and the timelines would certainly be sort of best case in the 10-year horizon based on the other projects that we have on the list and the priorities that we have identified. And again, for the north section, there is no funding mechanism identified for implementing those improvements at this time.
So soonest on the south side, and our delegations that you are not in the south side, I believe. No, they're not in the south side, is minimum 10 years.
That's correct. Yes.
And the north side, there's literally no funding. So it would be, and if you're to, obviously we're talking probably a couple decades out, I would assume, or it'd be much further.
Yes, like there's no funding identified. There may be some opportunities to do some smaller scale improvements through our isolated transit priority program, but
Right.
those would be things that would have minimal property impacts that could be done much more quickly and rapidly. And but the expectation is that we want to move this project, get the environmental assessment approved now, so that as properties come up for redevelopment along those corridors, we're protecting the correct amount of right of way, and that we can acquire the property through that redevelopment process to minimize the need for property acquisition when we can actually move those projects forward.
So if the beautiful restaurant remains the same and you're not changing it, really there's no triggers. It's
No.
only if the property's sold and you want to build like a high-rise condo or something right now.
That is correct. We would not
Yeah.
be moving forward with any property acquisition until we had funding for
Yeah, no
implementation.
property acquisition. Okay, good. Thank you for that. Councillor DeRoche.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to leave some of the details, or I'll leave the details of some specifics of the project to the ward councillor who knows it best. So I'll try not to intervene too much, but I was sympathetic to the delegations that came forward. there was some suggestion about changing the design potentially and perhaps moving some stops, what have you. Again, I would defer to the ward councillor on the details of that, but I'm wondering if you just comment on what kind of accommodation could be made to provide some potential relief or some balance there for the patios. Thank you.
So thank you for the question. So this project, this is at the environmental assessment stage, which is the planning stage. There is a design process that will happen. And at that point, the property impacts will be confirmed. All of these details will be confirmed at that point. And certainly opportunities for mitigation are something that staff are very keen to explore. So whether that's things like access consolidations or solutions to parking, if there's opportunities that we're able to pursue, certainly staff are very much wanting to do that, but also to be transparent that there's still likely to be property requirements along the corridor to be able to implement the mobility improvements that are recommended in the plan.
Okay, thank you. I was, of course, sympathetic to the feedback that I heard today, and I'm glad to hear that there's further opportunity to dialogue with them and see what kind of balance can be achieved there. Thank you.
Great question. I had the exact same thoughts. So thank you. Oh, I see the hand went down there. Great. And we're going to continue this dialogue. Don't worry. 20 years, as you hear, minimum before we get going on real stuff. So I'll sit in your patio in year 18 and enjoy some great food. So do we have any further questions on this item? Is this item carried? Carried. And we'll continue to discuss, folks, along with Councillor King as well, which is on the other side of the road as well. Thank you very much for coming out today. Great. Councillor Gower, 7.1, the always stop.
Okay, I'll quickly re-ask my question. The location of this always stop seems very similar to other intersections in my ward that we've been told we cannot do always stops without sidewalks and accessibility measures. So I'm concerned about the risk we might have of violating the AODA and wondering if staff can clarify or provide any additional context about why or how this might be different from other suburban wards.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. This location was deemed to not require sidewalks or implementation of twizzies and sidewalks due to the current configuration of the intersection. All approaches to the intersection are a rural cross-section with no existing separate pedestrian facilities. So there's no need for pedestrians using the intersection to mount a curb or have to go up and down from a curb at the intersection in order to facilitate their crossing at that location.
Okay, I'm certain I've got an intersection, at least one in my ward, where it has the same current characteristics, and we've been told that a stop cannot be installed without upgrading pedestrians. So I'm not, I just want to be clear, I think that the councillor has every right to request an always stop control, and I'm just concerned about that discrepancy in compliance with ADOA. So I'm going to dissent on this, but I will confer with our accessibility experts of the city. I just want to better understand and make sure we're being consistent. So thanks, Chair.
Fair question. Councillor Lowe, did you wish to respond?
Yeah, I'll just speak quickly to the report. Brentmore Road was built way back when, and in fact, it was one of those roads that at one point was a trail by Indigenous people before settlement. So and then it became today's road. So it was built as part of the Heart's Desire community in the 1950s or so, and at that time, Heart's Desire was a rural hamlet, and the road, Brentmore, was a through road between Woodruff and what was then Jockvale, what is now Longfields. As Barrhaven grew as Barrhaven grew and encroached the south towards Heart's Desire, Brentmore was cut off, but it's still often used as a throughway across my community, across that community, and so traffic volumes there are still quite low, but there's enough traffic there to have caused concerns, and I have received fairly regular requests over the last 3 years Staff have been very good with doing. I think there was one assessment that was done, the actual assessment that was done, and it didn't meet warrants. The thing is, it will never meet warrants. And this being a rural cross section, I found an opportunity here to address those resident concerns. I won't say quickly, but in a way, I found a way to address those resident concerns. And so I hope you can support me here in improving the safety at this intersection. There's also a sightline issue, but I won't get into that. But I hope you can support me in helping my community there improve this intersection so that we can put 1 point of traffic, in a way, a traffic calming for the community. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Lowe. Looking around the table, if we note just the dissent, is this item carried?
I'm going to dissent as well.
Okay, so on that 2 dissents, we got Vice Chair Kitts and Vice Chair and Committee Member Gower. Forgive me. Thank you for that. So we're on to the next item. Your backup, Councillor Lowe, in regards to the Watershield neighborhood parking restrictions. Maybe you want to introduce this. Thank you.
Do I need to read it in again, or?
It's already been read in.
Yeah.
You can just explain it if you wish, and then we'll allow for debate and discussion.
Okay, so thanks very much. The neighborhood that's in question here is a neighborhood that was built in sometime in the mid-2010s. Shortly after that, a mosque was added. The mosque fronts onto Woodruff, but it does have a back entrance for both vehicles and pedestrians to the property. So what's been happening over the last few years is last decade almost actually, is that there's been a lot of on-street parking, which on its own is not an issue, right? There's been a lot of on-street parking on both sides of these streets. The streets, though, however, are none of these are collector streets. All of these streets in the residential area are about 9 meters wide, 10 meters wide. And so they're inner residential streets. They're not collector streets. So they're not designed for a lot of through traffic with both sides of parking. To add to that, this neighborhood doesn't have driveways. Most of this neighborhood, rather, doesn't have driveways. And so when we get both sides of parking on that street and you have a car, like the emergency vehicles notwithstanding, if you're just looking at private vehicle traffic, if you have a car enter into this corridor with both sides of street parking, there is actually no way for the other car to duck around to let the other person pass. So it creates interesting situations. It creates situations where vehicles may have to back out a long stretch of roadway to let someone else pass. It's created situations in the past for snowplows, which we have addressed with staff through winter parking restrictions. And basically, this motion asks to extend the winter parking restrictions side of the street to apply to worship times only. I understand that targeting that one time can be problematic, but Occam's razor is you target the issue, right? So over the last 3 years since I was elected, I had engaged with the mosque on multiple occasions on possible options to improve the on-street parking situation, but also the on-site parking situation at the facility. And it hasn't yielded much. The mosque administration does communicate with their community to be respectful neighbors and to be respectful neighbors. But understanding that it is a very large community, people might not heed that message the way that the administration's intended. But I do appreciate the mosque administration for all the dialogue that we've had. So this motion aims to add a parking restriction for 4 hours every Friday on the same side where there is a winter restriction, existing winter restriction that will start after next winter as to roll out, as to not have that shock of losing one side of parking. And one side of street parking will still be retained on all of these streets during those 4 hours. Happy to answer any questions and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great. Committee Member Troster.
Thanks to the mover. Do you know of any other example where parking is restricted during the very specific hours that a religious institution has daily prayers?
Not that I know of here. In my hometown, there's a short stretch of street where Sunday parking is restricted because of a church. It's not Ottawa, but
So have you sought to restrict parking during church services near any of the congregations in your ward?
I don't have any churches.
Okay. I can't support this motion for a number of reasons. I understand you're trying to solve a problem, but we have a mosque that the Centertown Mosque recently took over a former church building in Centertown, and the reality of Muslim religious obligations is it involves prayer multiple times a day. So for people who even live close by, sometimes they do have to drive into park because they're going in and out of the congregation 3, 4, 5 times a day. That is a religious obligation. I'm deeply concerned about a precedent specifically banning parking during the time that a congregation is engaged in prayer services that are a religious obligation. I think this is potentially discriminatory. And I have to tell you, I have the same issue downtown. Yeah, I'd be interested in asking staff, sure. Do you know of any other example when there's been a restriction specifically during a congregation's prayer time?
Thank you. Through you, Chair, I would have to come back with that information.
And for any legal staff that might be present, could you foresee any court challenges if a parking restriction specifically targeted the time that a congregation had services?
Thank you, Councillor Chair. It would be premature to speculate on something of that nature, but it would be something that we could look into as well.
Yeah, I mean, we all need to learn to live together in our communities, and part of having a multicultural city is accepting that there are cultural practices that might pose a little bit of inconvenience to people. It's quite common in Centertown, if you have parking on both sides of the street, to have to slow and wait for the next person to go by. And frankly, the mosque took over a church in a much busier area of Centertown, and we manage. And this is not something I would seek in my own community, so I'm not comfortable seeking it or supporting it in your community, Councillor Low, even though I understand that you're trying to solve a problem. I think that a specific parking restriction during the time that the mosque is having Friday prayers to me is unacceptable. Thank you.
Committee member Bradley actually had her hand up and then it went down. So if it's okay, Councillor Devine. Bradley.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I had held this item for the very same reasons that Councillor Troster had raised. I represent a very diverse community in Gloucester Southgate Ward, and we have 5 mosques in our community. So I'm sympathetic to the challenges that parking poses, particularly with midday prayer times on Fridays. We see it in our ward as well. It impacts businesses and communities alike. But I don't think the solution here is to make it harder for congregation members to park in legal parking spots. I think if there are challenges with illegal parking, that we have tools to effectively deal with that. So I just think you're going to be pushing the problem to some other place within your community. People still need to get to their time of prayer. So I won't be supporting this motion because I do think that it as Councillor Troster had pointed out, could be potentially discriminatory. If you had put forward a motion that was eliminating parking in perpetuity on the street, maybe that might carry more water. But I think because you've targeted specific prayer times, it's very evident what you're trying to prevent, which is having members of the Muslim community park on those residential streets, which they're entitled to. So I just wanted to contextualize my dissent and express my concerns with that approach. Thanks.
Councillor Devine.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm very familiar with this mosque and the area behind it. I know just how congested it can be in those streets behind, and I know those streets well. They are very narrow. And to my colleague's point about, is there precedent for this? While I haven't done something as specific as what Councillor Lowe is doing, I have done something very, very similar in that I have one church in my ward where, because of the church's expansion and the huge population of that church and the amount of congestion that poses to neighborhood, to the neighboring streets, I put parking restrictions in place that are meant specifically to focus on the issue that happens on Sunday mornings. I didn't make the parking restrictions, thou shalt not park from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. on God's day. I didn't do that, but it's there in place. So question to the mover, if you have if you've got a situation of, parking congestion on Friday afternoons, to what another colleague said, would you be amenable to changing your motion whereby you're seeking to prevent parking on those streets all the time?
So, sorry. Currently, the conversations I've had with those residents, the residents in that community, whether it's through door knocking, through social media, through email, and whatever, has been focused on a specific approach, right? I have entertained the thought of it because of some of the, to reflect some of the other comments that have been made. I have entertained the thought of just banning it on Fridays, period. However, then that poses then that gives then that impacts the residents who do live there. Like I said, like I mentioned during my rambling earlier, the houses in this community, most of the houses in this community don't have driveways in the front. Rather, they have a parking laneway in the back with the garage with not actual driveway. It's just an access into the garage. And so on-street parking, the street layout there is limited in terms of passing space, right? If you have driveways, cars can duck into the voids where the driveways are to kind of let someone else go around. But here we have stretches of 90 to 100 meters where there's, if there's two walls of vehicles on either side in the spring, summer, and fall, there's no realistic way sometimes, and it's led to some fairly terse standoffs, even among the worshipers even among the congregation that attends the mosque. And candidly speaking, like there are members of the mosque who live in that neighborhood too who are supportive of this, and so it's. My conversations though have been focused on the time limited one. If I were to expand it, I would feel most comfortable by going back to them first, and before entertaining that seriously.
I remember watching my predecessor have many of these conversations where residents were trying to impose changes, and my predecessor would always say, "You own your house, you don't own the street." And I think when you're going back to your residents and asking what they want, they're going to try to get their cake and eat it too. They're going to try to say, "We'd like to park every single hour except when they park there." And as long as you're aiming to cater to that, I think you're going to get into a situation where there's going to be perceived bias. If you don't have parking congestion problems on those streets other days, I would say the safest way to work around this issue is just to have a ban of parking restriction on those days. As soon as you try to cater to a certain thing, even if it's just Friday, somebody's going to say, "Oh, I happen to know that prayers are on Friday. Seems like it's targeted for that reason." I don't know if there's a big rush for you to pass this now, but you say you want to go back and talk to the community or talk to staff. If there's possibly a way to have further conversations about it and come back with a more palatable, pardon me?
You want to withdraw it and have more conversation? Oh, continue. Sorry, finish your.
If possibly there's a way to come back and have a scenario that meets the needs of residents, meets the needs of congregants, and might not put it in a situation of seeing like it's targeted against a specific group, maybe it'll be a stronger idea.
Yeah, so honestly speaking, I moved this because I moved the separate parking motion, so I thought I'd just put them all together. Yes, there is truth to there not being a true rush here because the intention is to implement it after the winter parking restriction on one side of all of those streets end, right? So I don't have that random shock of, oh, suddenly all this parking's gone on Fridays, right? So I'm willing to take it back to my community and discuss how they would feel about expanding it so it feels less targeted. So that it is less targeted. And then I will remove the motion because the intention is still there to address this issue, but I will see if I can make any tweaks to it that can make this more palatable to my colleagues here. Thank you.
Great. I'm just checking with the clerk's office since you've indicated withdrawal of the motion. I just want to know if we still proceed with discussion or is it now considered withdrawn?
So if I understand the member correctly, he's seeking to withdraw this motion at this time with the will of committee. So if committee is in agreement with that, then there would be no further debate on it.
Okay. It's more so because we have a council that has their hand up. So I just want to know from a legislative point of view, If the counselor is withdrawing it, would Counselor Sosky have questions? Oh, Counselor Sosky, you're fine?
Yeah, I can take it. I can take it out as a question to staff more generally, so I can follow up later. It's all good. Yeah.
Wonderful. So, committee, is this item withdrawn? Good, thank you, and can you keep working on that, Councillor Lowe? I know you're working for your community on this, but there's lots of things to think about on these things, unfortunately. So we're moving on to. Oh, so we have inquire from Councillor Troster.
Thank you so much, Chair. And thanks to staff for working with me on this. This past summer, we saw multiple serious accidents at intersections that involve vulnerable road users, cyclists, or pedestrians. In particular, 2 cyclists were hit at different intersections on the same day by drivers who, according to witness statements given to the Ottawa Police, were executing lawful right turns. Across the city, and specifically at many intersections downtown, we have placed restrictions on right turns on red. This is a safety precaution to prevent generally permissible vehicle movements that, given the context of the unique intersection, would present an unacceptable risk. It is relevant that right turns on red were not permitted in North America until the 1970s, and Ontario amended its Highway Traffic Act to permit right turns on red in 1984. The change was motivated by high gas prices and driver convenience, not out of an effort to make roads safer. As far back as the 1980s, there were reports from Insurance Institute for Highway Safety in the United States that permitting right turns on red increased pedestrian deaths by 60% and increased cyclist deaths via collisions with cars by up to 100%. Beyond recording fatalities and major injuries associated with right turn on red, a study from the CAA released in June 2025 found that serious near misses most often include vehicles turning right, accounting for 55% of pedestrian and 50% of cyclist conflicts. While revising the Highway Traffic Act is out of Council's purview, strategically banning right turn on red within municipal boundaries merits discussion. What percentage of intersections in the inner urban and downtown wards currently have right turn on red restrictions, and what are the criteria for those bans? What would be the barriers of implementing these bans more extensively? What impacts do right turn on red restrictions and pedestrian cycling advance have on traffic flow? Given the growing number of pedestrian and or cyclist leads at intersections, is restricting right turn on red standard for an intersection when introducing pedestrian cycling advances? Why or why not? Open Ottawa data lists accident impact types, including turning movement, but not whether it's a left or a right turn. According to the city's website, between 2019 and 2023, 26% of collisions resulting in fatal or major injuries to pedestrians involved a left turn movement. What is the percentage for right turns for cyclists with left and right turns? So thank you for staff for working on this with me. There's obviously been a lot of questions in my community about this issue. And before I begin strategizing with the community on what we may do, I'm just seeking more information to better understand the issue. Thank you.
Great. And just as clarification, I've already asked. I wasn't sure. Originally, I thought you're bringing notice of motion. Apparently, that's not the case, which is good. I think more information is probably better. I've heard from many colleagues that were quite concerned as well. So this is just simply an inquiry. There's no decision being made, colleagues, if you're wondering. That being said, that inquiry is now officially on the record. We have another inquiry that is in front of us. And Councillor Gower, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. The City of Ottawa is participating in Ontario's e-scooter pilot program running from January 1st, 2020 to November 27th, 2029. Overall, there seems to be a lack of awareness from residents and parents about rules and regulations. For example, that e-scooter operators must be at least 16 years old. How has the City of Ottawa and its partners promoted awareness of e-scooter safety and the rules and regulations for operation of e-scooters? And how is the city and province collecting information and feedback to inform whether or not the pilot is successful? Thank you.
Great. Thank you for that. So we'll take that inquiry, and I think there's certainly more as more micromobility devices are rolling around. Forgive my distraction. We're going to move on to other business, and I'm going to take the opportunity as chair. Right now, Premier Ford is doing announcements on automated speed enforcement right now in Stephen Del Duca's area. I've been trying to work with the province. I've been, literally my phone's going off like crazy with municipalities across the entire province, even across the country, because people know we will face challenges. So briefly, I've put a message up trying to find some path through the forest. You know, I originally wrote the note, we're hours away. I guess we're finding out right now. There's a big presentation that hasn't started with giant Hollywood-style signs with blinking. Why do we need signs to tell people to do the speed limit is beyond me, but I'll just read my statement is we're hours away from finding out the fate of our automated speed enforcement in Ontario municipalities. Listening to the concerns of the province, we've gotten here, and I want to remind us that the province gave us the tool, and it's completely up to them if they wish to remove them, but yet we have a real opportunity to refine it. Suggestions have been brought forward through myself to the Minister of Transportation, the Honourable Pradmeet Sakaria, that the government cares, and I know they do care about pedestrian safety. The province, first of all, should look at appointing an overseer of the committee, a small number of municipalities that actually sets the speed threshold currently being held by Toronto as a suggestion. If they're that concerned about when the triggering happens, that was one suggestion I presented. Second, restricting to school zones is a must. From their perspective, I was hoping that that would be the case. We will find out soon if we're able to hold on to a minimum the school zones. Something we all hear about. It's still the #1 complaint in every counselor's office is about speeding. We can debate cash grab or not in spots that are not, but school zones are a must. You know, again, doing 61 in a 50 zone is clearly speeding. We know this and it's dangerous. We have the data to support that it does work. And we've heard this across the country and we've heard it across the province. Eliminating the broad terms, safety zones, and again, as extending an olive branch to school safety zones is something I've also proposed. And maybe one day we can get to the point where we can talk about, and I'm speaking to Nan down in Hamilton as well, about seniors' homes, another vulnerable population. But at this point, we're just trying to save the furniture and hold on to the school zones at a minimum. Automatically, again, looking at this from how this got here today, back in May 2017, and I did post this on X, by the way. In May 2017, the third reading by Stephen Clark, the PC opposition member at the time, said he would 100% support it if it was just school zones. Well, this is the proposal I brought forward. Back then, it's also a good opportunity to remind us that Stephen Del Duca, you remember that guy? The transportation minister under Kathleen Wynne that actually introduced the act, actually was the champion of it. Well, he is the outlying black sheep mayor that has suddenly wanted to turn off cameras. The logic doesn't make sense. In the debate, I also emphasize that the legislation's about road safety in school zones and community zones, giving that these actually help protect our children. And this was also brought up during the debate and discussion when they introduced this to municipalities as a tool. In addition, the City of Ottawa already has traffic calming measures in our budgets, and we use them working with the communities. So any offer of here's some money to throw in speed bumps, imagine speed bumps every 5 feet. That would be, yeah, that's really going to solve the problem. Many of these speed humps will create challenges for first responders and create annoyances for residents. The data supports that they're effective in school zones, and working together, I think there is an opportunity. This will also allow the Association of Municipalities of Ontario that's firmly spoken out unanimously, saying that we want to continue with the automated speed enforcement. I sent this letter saying, I trust this is satisfactory, and I look forward to the continued relationship with the province. And as we depart from this meeting today, I guess we'll find out the details, and I'll strive as chair to continue to advocate with my councillor colleagues across Brampton's unanimous. I was speaking to Rowena Santos. We got Councillor Nan down in the Hamilton area. I had Roy Neeson in Burlington. We've got all these people that are very vocal about this. about safety. It's about safety first. So on that, that was my other business. And I see some nodding of heads. This is a other business statement, not really a discussion, but if you have something just to add, certainly you can add to that if you wish, but it was more of just other business closing out. And now we're going to go back and see what the fate for municipalities across 444 municipalities is. Thank you very much, everybody. That concludes today's meeting. The next meeting will take place October 23rd, 2025. Godspeed.